Okay, good morning. So last time I spoke, I felt like I didn't quite finish. And so what I'd like to do is finish the last message. So bear with me, I'm going to do a little review because there were some people that weren't here, and I'll do it quickly, and then we'll move on. Yeah, don't laugh. Yeah, okay, yeah, when I say quickly, good point. Okay, that's a valid point. All right, anyway, so the title is The 12 Virtues, and we'll get into it. I had the scripture reading given, this is the scripture I gave, and appropriately enough, Matthew read it, and we'll see why that's appropriate. But anyway, so 2 Peter 1, 4 through 7, whereby are given unto us exceeding great and precious promises, that by these you might be partakers of the divine nature. Now I want you to notice that. We're going to be partakers of the divine nature. Okay? We're going to get into this. Having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. And besides this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to your virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. And so you see there's a list of things that are slowly being added. I love this. This is an awesome verse. But anyway, so let me do the review real quick. All right, now you guys know, I told you last time, and a lot of you know anyway, that I write fiction. And I've written 4 books so far, although I'm still playing with them and changing them, so yeah. As I was writing the 4th book there, that you see me holding, I also began to read this book, and I don't remember how I got it. Somebody gave it to me or something. It's called Raising a Modern Day Knight. And the whole point of the book was talking about the fact that we don't really have a system in our culture to establish adulthood. In other words, like, and I struggled with this. So you're a child, and then you're a teenager, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into the world. And wait, am I a man yet? You know, that's kind of the scenario that we find ourselves in. And it's really difficult for parents as well, because I've experienced both sides of it. I remember how my dad was acting, and I was like, why is he acting like this? And now I understand why. Because he went from having a child to he's still a child. And when's that transition? When do you go, okay, you're a man now, you got to do your own thing, right? And so it's even tough on parents. So it's tough on both. Well, this book was talking about how we should set up kind of some ceremony to help our kids and say, okay, now you're a man or you're a woman. You know, now you're expected. Do you remember the story of Jesus when he went to the temple at 12? And most people are like, okay, he was a man, right? And he even says, shouldn't I not be about my Father's business? So see, he's already, and in Jewish cultures, they have the bar mitzvah, which is bar is for son. They also have bat mitzvah, which is for the girls. And so that's that line in your life where you go, I am now an adult. And I have to act differently. I can't, you got to put away childish things, right? So anyway, that was what that book's about. Really good book. I don't know that I finished it, but it was a good book. I have a tendency. At the same time, or around about the same time, I stumbled across this TV show on Netflix. Now, I'm not recommending you watch it. I know a lot of you guys don't watch TV, and that's better probably. But I got something out of this show, and I'll share it with you. And then a little while later, I ran across this, they found this structure in Turkey, and we'll talk about that a little more. It's called Göbekli Tepe. I always say it wrong. And then lastly, the last piece of this puzzle is we started Pathfinders. And that being in Pathfinders and kind of seeing how the things ran, everything clicked in my mind. And so I'm going to go through it real quick. First of all, the quest. This show was kind of a game show, kind of like the what's the show you were voted off the island? Survivor, thank you. It's like Survivor, except they put fantasy, medieval concepts. You start off in a castle. And it was really neat. I liked it because I like that kind of stuff. And in the show, when you succeeded in a like a trial, you went through this trial, whoever won, they got this pin. They put a pin on them, right? And it was called, did I put it on here? Oh, here are the different pins. And this first one is mark. It's a mark of intelligence. So they called it marks. So you had, I can only find online 9. I don't remember because I hadn't watched the show in ages, but there were at least 9 of these different marks. Can you see them? And each mark symbolized something. So you have intelligence, bravery, strength, and ingenuity, observation, strategy, wisdom, dexterity, and leadership. So you went through all these trials to prove that you had this mark, or this, what I would call a virtue, right? And so I was like reading that book about becoming a man, that line in the sand, or in your life rather, and watching this show and thinking, how could we give these tokens? And we've actually started to do it a little bit in Pathfinders, right? Where we're making the little pins that represent, and each one is a biblical character. So I even slid that over into the Pathfinders, right? But anyway, so again, raised in the modern night, had influences on this, and the fact that I was Pathfinder. And if you'll notice, what do they give us in Pathfinders when we do stuff? Yeah, we get a little patch. And so it's almost like the same concept. And I think that's why I click, in my brain. All right. And again, those could represent virtues, the different patches, right? But the problem with all of those is I don't like them. I don't like the symbols. An eye, and I didn't really like that. Plus, some of the virtues I didn't really see as virtues. You know what I mean? Intelligence, it's good to be intelligent, but is that a virtue? You know what I mean? So we'll get into it. I didn't like the term mark either. I think you know why. Mark of the beast, mark of intelligence, mark of I didn't really like that. So I took my cue from Genesis chapter, I have 12 through 13, but I'm only going to use verse 12. And God said, "This is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations." And what was the token? It was the rainbow, right? He put that in the sky and he called it a token. And so in my mind, I'm like, not a mark, because see, a mark could be a symbol of something. Not a mark, but a token. A token that you have this. I just like that better, okay? So just me. And again, the rainbow is a token. Well, how does Göbekli Tepe? Notice the ark. What happened to the ark? Where did it land? We believe it landed in Turkey. The mountains of Ararat, right? Which are in Turkey. This structure that I was telling you about was found in Turkey. They believe it's one of the oldest structures ever found. And so, to me, it's interesting because on these stones are animals carved. There's carved animals. You can see there's a bull on that one. Maybe you can see it. And so there's all these carved animals. Well, if they got off the ark with all these animals, and that's in Turkey, and it's one of the oldest structures, could it be that this is some kind of memorial to the fact that we survived, the human race and all the animals survived through God's protection upon an ark? Now, it could be that they twisted it. I'm not saying that it wasn't a pagan site, but is this some kind of memory that was etched in stone? That fascinates me. Okay. So, I went with 12 tokens. I don't like the idea of the marks again. And why did I pick animals? Because what came off the ark? Animals. And, man is the chief, right? The pinnacle of creation, let's say. And when I say man, I mean mankind. Man and woman. We're the pinnacle of creation. And so what each of these animals represent should be contained in us. And I think would have been contained in us in the beginning before the fall, right? And so you have the man, notice he's got all the colors in him. So he should have all these virtues. Now, I also want to point out now, of all the animals, only one of them is make-believe in that circle, and it's a unicorn. Now, I did that because I just like fantasy, okay? So, but you could use, well, by the way, this is actually what a unicorn looks like. So the other one is fantasy. This is a real unicorn. Probably that was, because these have been found. We found fossil records of these things. They're big, huge, single horn. But it's not as cool as a unicorn, like a fantasy unicorn, which comes from the Middle Ages, by the way. See, that's an old painting from the Middle Ages. Now, one thing I want you to notice is the feet of this unicorn in this picture and the feet of this rhinoceros, a version of a rhinoceros. Do you notice the feet are very different? A rhinoceros has like elephant feet. So would he be clean or unclean? Unclean. And that's not even counting if he chews the cud. We're just talking about his feet. He has to have cloven hooves, right? But notice the medieval unicorn has cloven hooves. Now you could assume that it is actually, even though it's a fictional creature, it is clean. You could assume that. It looks like a horse, but it's not a horse. It's a unicorn. It's different. Now, the reason that's important is because in this circle of animals, the unicorn also could stand for the lamb. Okay? So when I talk about the unicorn, I want you to think lamb. That's really what we're referring to. But when you're doing fiction and you're trying to market to the world, you don't want to be too on the nose, right? And so if I put lamb up there, everybody be like, oh, we see what you're doing. So I used the unicorn. Okay? That's the reason I did that. All right. But in my stories, in the fictional world, it would be a clean animal, and that's important. Okay. All right, so back to Göbekli Tepe. Here's the site. It's very strange because they believe it was filled in on purpose. The dirt was filled in on purpose. So was it like, what do they call that when they bury something and come back? Time capsule? Was it a time capsule? Was it? Who knows? We don't know. Here's some of the other stone works in it. And again, very interesting. I just think it's fascinating. And here's an artist's rendition of what it would look like. And I'm showing you this for a reason. So here, again, the artist's rendition. And so what I in the story, I designed a room like this. And so here it is. Now I'm putting this because this is where Pathfinders comes in. Because there's a path. There's a path that we follow, right? We follow Christ, we follow this path. And so you imagine this room, and if you'll see, you can look at the top, there's a chair, okay? So it's kind of a throne room. Now, imagine when you come in this from the bottom here, all right? You come in there, and you will go to your right, okay? And then as you go to your right, you'll pass each one of these pillars, okay? And it's a path. It's symbolic, all right? And so each pillar represents the 12 virtues, okay? And I'm just explaining this to you so you kind of see where I'm going, and then I'm going to make more sense in a minute. So as you would go around this room, you would call out the name of the pillar. And each pillar would be, like I said, a virtue, okay? So that's based on the ideas that I got from Göbekli Tepe. I think I said that right that time. So now back to these. You know, I don't like these. The intelligence, like I said, I don't think that should be a virtue. Strength. You know, what do you mean by strength? Leadership. Well, I mean, we can't all be leaders, right? But we are all leaders So yeah, there you go. But anyway, strategy, I don't see that. So to me, again, those are marks of intelligence. I don't like that. By the way, here's the definition of a mark. It's a line, a figure, or a symbol made as an indication or record of something. So I see what they were getting at. But again, I don't like the word mark, so I went with tokens. All right. But what tokens should we go with? Again, intelligence, no. Bravery, I could see that. Strength, no. Ingenuity, I don't think so. Observation, strategy. I could see wisdom being a virtue, right? Dexterity, that just means you're good with your fingers, or, no. And then leadership, again, I don't see that as a virtue. All right, so I wanted to come up with my own virtues, or rather, a list of virtues that were more accurate. So where would I get virtues? What do you think? Where would I find a list of virtues? The Bible? Yeah. Let's go to the Bible. That's the best place to find the virtues. But I want to be a little more, I want a little better focus. Not just virtues in general, but a particular set of virtues. And where would we find that, do you think? How about the Ten Commandments? Wouldn't the Ten Commandments be a great set of virtues? And what do we call the Ten Commandments? What do we say about them? The character of God, right? They reflect the character of God. Now I want you to notice what I said. They reflect the character of God. Would we say that God doesn't make graven images and bow down to them? Why would he ever even venture into that? You see what I'm getting at? So they're kind of rules built on the character of God. Well, what is the character of God, though? You see what I'm getting at? So, yes, but what I'm getting at is, if we're going to talk about 12 virtues and we want them to be based on the character of God, then they can't be the law in the sense of, like, if I don't steal, then I'm not a thief. What am I? You see what I'm saying? So I want in a sense, the positive of what that law represents. Is that making sense? So what are the laws? They're kind of hard to see. So here they are, and they're in no particular order, obviously. And these are abbreviated. So the first one would be no other gods before God, right? And then no graven images. And then not taking the Lord's name in vain. And then remember the Sabbath day, right? And then honoring your father and your mother, or your parents. Not murdering. Not committing adultery, right? Not stealing. Have you ever noticed? I noticed this here recently because I was trying to remember the order. I can remember them all, but I'd lose the order right in there. But they're from what we would consider worst to least, right? Murder's the worst thing you could do. Adultery's the next worst thing. And then stealing. That's the only way I can remember that part. I don't know why. Anyway, okay, so no stealing, right? What's next? No coveting. No coveting, right? So there's all your commandments. All right. So how does that apply to the set of creatures that I have picked out? And we talked about this already, right? Didn't we read that? Yes, we read that. Okay. All right. So, for bearing false witness, I came up with honesty. That makes sense, right? Okay. No other gods, fidelity, meaning being faithful to God, right? Adultery, chastity. That makes sense. Not stealing, giving in charity. Charity is another word for love, by the way, but it means giving of yourself. So being selfless as opposed to selfish. All right. 6 days of labor, diligence. Because that is part of the commandment. A lot of people miss that. I know I like to overlook that because I don't like to work much. Okay, anyway. No murdering. Well, you have to have patience. Sometimes you want to murder people, but you got to be patient, right? No graven images. There's wisdom, because graven image can't do anything for you. Not taking the Lord's name in vain. That's courage, and I'll explain why it's courage in a minute. Honoring your parents I have twice, because you have to be humble and you have to be courteous. So I put 2 on that one. We'll get to it. And then contentment. If you're content with what you have, you will not covet what other people have, right? And then remember the Sabbath day, which is temperance, finding the balance in life. Okay. Now, that was the overview. I covered all that before except for the animals part. So, first off, we're going to start with honesty. Because I don't want to just tell you these, and hey, Jason came up with this. That's not what happened here. God showed these things in His Word, okay? And so I want to show you that part. All the other was building up to this. Okay. Honesty is the first one, and I picked the rooster. Why do you think I picked a rooster? What do you think? Do you recall the story of Peter? And remember how he had a false conception of himself? And then after he denied Christ, how many times? 3 times he heard the rooster crow. And then, boom, the truth was on him. And he had to be honest with himself and with others. And so to me, that rooster crowing is a symbol of honesty. And so that's why I picked that. Okay, but let's do some Bible verses. 1 Timothy 2:2. For kings and for all that are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceful life in all godliness and what? Honesty. So right there, Paul's telling us that that's part of leadership. You know, we were talking about that leadership. And guess what? We're all in leadership positions. If you're a parent, maybe just if you're leading someone to Christ, notice the word lead isn't there. So, okay, next verse. Ephesians 4:15. Excuse me. But speaking the truth in love may grow up into Him in all things, which is the head, even Christ. So speak the truth in love. We got to be honest, but it's got to be mixed with one of the other virtues, which is love. That's why they all go together, you notice? Anyway, so there's honesty, right? Right out of the Bible. Okay, fidelity. Oh, darn it. So fidelity is a wolf. I'll get back to that in a second. We'll go over the first verses first. 1 Corinthians 4:2. Moreover, it is required, I'll get it in a minute, in stewards, are we stewards? That a man be found faithful, meaning you can trust him, right? Faithful. And look at 1 Thessalonians 5:24. Faithful is he that calleth you, who also will do it. Now, who is this person that calls us? It's God. So here, Paul's telling us that God is faithful. And remember, this whole point is that we want to be like God, remember? And so to be like God, and I struggle with this, by the way. I'm not saying that these things are something I accomplished. These are the goals, right? This is the goal set before us. And so we should be faithful. The next one, there. Now the wolf pops up. Great. Anyway, 2 Thessalonians 3:3. But the Lord is faithful, who shall establish you and keep you from evil. So who is faithful? God. And who do we want to be like? God. Now why did I pick a wolf? You know, wolves, they live in a pack. And usually they stick together. They're faithful to each other. They can trust each other. They work together. And I just thought that's a great symbol. A wolf. And I don't mean wolf in the bad sense. You know, you got the bad sense of wolf. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the good sense of a wolf and sticking with his pack. Okay. Chastity. And the thing's not going to pack. Great. Anyway, 2 Corinthians 11:2. I rushed to put it together and didn't get some of the things to pop up at the same time that they should. 2 Corinthians 11:2. For I am jealous over you with godly jealousy. For I have espoused you to one husband, that I may present you a chaste virgin to Christ. So there's purity, right? To be chaste. Now it shows up. Now I picked the dove. I had originally picked a swan, and somebody went, well, why don't you go with a dove? And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go with a dove. The reason I was going with a swan is because they're white, pure. But I thought, yeah, dove's pretty cool. And doves are symbols. And by the way, they're turtle doves. Did you know they mate for life? And so that's the reason I went ahead and went with doves. Because chastity isn't just about not having sex, okay? Chastity is also, this next verse, 1 Corinthians 6:18. Flee fornication. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body, but he that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body. And why is Paul saying that? Because when you commit adultery or do these things, it's against the woman or man that you're married to, who you have become one flesh with. In fact, if you have premarital relations, then you've just cheated on your future husband or wife. Think about that. So no matter how you unpack that, chastity isn't really about not having relations. It's about keeping yourself purely to that one person. And so chastity, I think, is a great virtue. It's a virtue of being committed to that one person in your life and staying away from, like I said, fornication. All right, next one. Hey, it popped up this time. Charity. Now, charity is, like I said, it's another word for love in the Bible. Why did I pick a unicorn? Because, again, in the story, the unicorn gives his own life, and that's in the story. But in the Bible, who gives his own life? The lamb, right? And so, again, a clean animal, a sacrificial animal. Look at here, 1 Corinthians 16:14. Let all your things be done with charity. Everything that you do should be done with love, right? 1 Peter 4:8. And above all things, have fervent charity. Not just charity, but fervent charity among yourselves. For charity shall cover a multitude of sins. Think about that. When you love somebody, you overlook some of their faults, don't you? Don't you? Like, who really, really loves their husband? You love Russell? Do you overlook some of his, some of his faults? Do you overlook that? Yeah. If you really, really love your spouse, if they get a little big, you don't think about it, right? Like, he starts to get old and gray and maybe got a gobble wobble, and you overlook that, right? So, not that those are sins. I'm just saying love overlooks things, right? All right, let's look at the next verse. Colossians 3:14. Colossians. I said that weird, didn't I? And above all these things, put on charity, which is the bond of what? Perfectness or perfection. So to have, and remember, we're talking about putting on Christ. And so, again, we're following that same idea, right? Is putting on this virtue. I'll say that. Okay. And then 1 Timothy 1:5. Now the end of the commandment is what? Charity, out of a pure heart, and of a good conscience, and of faith unfeigned. So again, charity being the same thing as love, giving of yourself. The end of the commandment is when you give to others, right? When you sacrifice what you want for someone else. That is charity. All right. By the way, it's also love, and of course, in our world, we would symbolize it as a lamb. Okay. Diligence. Okay. I'm grumbling because the animal's supposed to, or the creature is supposed to pop up next to the words. I got it out of order. I was rushing. Okay. Proverbs 4:23. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Diligence means you're ready to work and you're really paying attention, right? Those are the two ways we can use the word diligent. And so he's saying, pay attention and work towards these things. Okay, next verse. 2 Peter 1:10. Wherefore, the rather, brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure, for if you do these things, you shall never fall. So what are we doing here? Giving diligence? Again, we're being very watchful and we're working hard. So is it wrong to work? No. In fact, I got a verse that you brought up last time, 2 Thessalonians 3:10. For even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should he eat. So we got, God made us to work. You remember the story? What was Adam's purpose? To lay around all day? Pick his nose? He was a gardener. His job was to work. Now, I'm not talking about sweat of your brow work, because remember that comes on later. But the joy of using your creativity that's given to you by God to do things. Now imagine, he said, Adam's like, I think that a rose bush would look really good right there. Those kinds of things. I think that we need to put a pool right here. This would be a good place for a pool. And he digs a pool. See? And so that's, we were designed to work. Now we're supposed to do something else too, right? What is that? Well, we'll get to that. Okay, patience. Did I explain? I didn't explain why I picked the honeybee. Why do you think I picked the honeybee? Worker bee, right? Now, they work. But what do they get for all the work that they do? What do they get? They get honey. They get sweetness. So think about it. Your work should have a reward. So that's why I think it's a perfect symbol for diligence. Because they're watchful. What are they watching for? Flowers. Yeah, right? And what's really cool, this is slight side note, what's really cool is when a bee finds a flower, she'll go back to the nest and do this like little dance to tell the other ones where the flowers are. So cool. They have it on film. It's really neat. They put like a dot on the bee and then followed her, anyway, back to the hive and then watched her do the little dance. It's really interesting. If you ever get a chance, look up that video and watch it. Okay, now patience. And the animal's not going to pop up yet. Romans 8:25. Huh? Yeah, I got to be patient. Be patient with myself. But if we hope for that we see not, then do we with patience wait for it. So sometimes you got to wait. What is the, I should have put this one in here. Blessed is the man who what? Waits upon the Lord, right? So again, you may pray for something, but you got to be patient and let God do it in his time. Hebrews 6:12, that ye be not slothful. There's one for the diligence, right? But followers of them who through faith and patience inherit the promises. Notice, to inherit the promises, you got to have faith and be patient. And so patience is really important. Now it comes up. Tortoise, actually. James 1:3. Knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh what? Patience. So when you go through a little bit of a hard time, that's God teaching you patience. You ever heard anybody say, don't pray for patience, because you'll have trouble, right? Actually, you should pray for patience, because it just said that's how you inherit the promises. So even if you're going to be having a lot of trouble at times, don't worry about it. Go for it, right? Now, why did I pick a turtle, do you think, or a tortoise?
Because it's slow. It has to wait to get to the place.
There you go. It's slow. When I talk about patience, I don't just mean patience towards others. Sometimes you have to be patient with yourself. You think about that turtle. He's like, I'll get there someday, Now, even though that's kind of a thing, I'll tell you this story really quick. I was mowing the yard and I found a little box turtle, And so I set him over I didn't want to hit him with the mower, so I set him out of the way, and I mowed around a little bit, and I looked over, and he's gone. And I was like, where did that turkey go? I couldn't find him anywhere. So they're faster than they look. But anyway, but to me, it's a mental symbol for, being patient with each other. All right. Wisdom. And Colossians 4:5. Walk in wisdom towards them that are without, redeeming the time. Now, we'll go further. Psalms 111:10. Now listen to this. The fear of the Lord, this verse is actually said multiple times and multiple places with a little different wording. This is a very important. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his what? Commandments. His praise endureth forever. So wisdom is following God's commandments. That is a virtue for sure, isn't it? Let's see. I'm halfway through because we got 6 more. He looks at his watch. Remember the tortoise. Nah, go ahead. I'm just telling you.
I'll wait till you get done.
Okay. I was just letting you know. It's going to be a little bit. I'm going to go over a little. I apologize. Okay, Proverbs 2.
Somebody coming after, that's all I'm asking.
Huh?
Just remember you have somebody coming after.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, Proverbs 2:6. For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of the mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. Now, I picked this first because this explains what wisdom is. Wisdom is having knowledge and understanding of that knowledge, right? So God gives us knowledge in his law, and then he gives us his Holy Spirit to understand that law and how it works. For instance, I could say, well, there's a law of this. And then if I have wisdom, I could apply that law to maybe something else, right? Like, for instance, there's a law that says that you're to put a barrier on your house to keep people from falling off the top of your house. That's in the law. It's in the laws of Moses. So to use wisdom on that, what would I learn? How do I understand that law? Well, how about my property has to be set up in such a way that I protect people from injuries. So now I've shown wisdom. Yes, ma'am.
How about not doing things that will make your neighbor stumble?
That's a good one too, yeah. Not doing things that will make your neighbor stumble. Good one. And then for this one, one more. Proverbs 13:10. Only by pride cometh contention, but with the well-advised is wisdom. Now check that out. The well-advised. What does that mean? It means I'm listening, right? I'm asking for counsel. There's another verse that says the multitude of counselors is safety, right? And so if you listen to a lot of other people's opinions, of course, pray about it, and God's the paramount opinion that you should look for. But you can get wisdom, or it shows wisdom when you're willing to listen, right? Now, how big are elephants' ears? Pretty big. In fact, an elephant can hear, they make a noise that's so low that we can't hear it, but they can hear it, and they can actually rumble, and miles away, the scientists have seen this, miles away, elephants will all turn and get real still. And what it is they're listening to that elephant miles away talk to him. It's really cool. So wisdom, listening, and I actually used the word mammoth, which is an elephant. Okay, courage. Joshua 1:9. Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee wheresoever thou goest. Why would we have courage as a virtue? Because we trust that God's got it. Right? So now, the last book I wrote, there's a line I used in the book, inspired. I don't think I came up with it. And this is the line. Fear is a chance for courage. I don't think I come up with that. So don't think that courage means you're not afraid. Actually, courage means you stared your fear in the face and did what you had to do anyway. You think about all these guys that go to war and they show courage. Nobody said they weren't afraid, but they did what they had to do anyway. That's courage. Okay? 2 Timothy 1:7. For God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. So again, if we are in God, if we're putting on Christ, he doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but of courage. And I don't know why that's out of order. But anyway, 1 Corinthians 16:13, watch ye, stand fast in the faith, quiet ye like a man, or like men, be strong. So he's saying, stand your ground, be courageous. Now, why did I pick a lion, do you think? Everybody thinks of a courage of lions, right? I watched a really cool documentary where these lions were taking on hyenas. And one lion facing down a whole pack of hyenas, and it's dangerous. A hyena can break bones with their teeth. But what's really weird is the hyena society is very strange. The leader of their pack is the female. They have a lead female, and the other females are not allowed to mate. It's really weird. But anyway, the point is that lions will literally face down hyenas. They do not like each other. They've been at war for years, and nobody really knows why, except for hyenas will kill baby lions if they find them, and even a solo lion if they can. All right. Humility. Hey, it came up. Humility. And I picked the ox or the bull. Why? Because here you have this huge animal, very strong, and yet he's humbled enough to pull the plow for a man. Right? And so to me, that's a strength, but still humble. Now, of course, we know that some bulls aren't humble and they do some things. But a good bull is humble. A good ox is humble and will pull the plow. And so I think that's kind of a neat picture of humility in the animal world. Proverbs 15:33. Fear the Lord, or the fear of the Lord is instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility. Now notice we just talked about wisdom again, but also before honor is humility. Remember how Christ talked about if you come to a party, and this is Jason's paraphrase version, if you come to a party and you're looking at all the chairs and seats, he said, don't go to the biggest, best seat, right? But go to the lowest seat. And then if somebody sees you, maybe they'll say, oh, no, you have more honor than this. And so they'll move you from that seat to a better seat. And so everybody sees, oh, look at him, he just got put up. It would be much worse to take the best seat and then have somebody come up and go, excuse me, that's actually reserved for someone else. Could you come over here? And now you're brought down. And so Christ is like, it's better to be humble. And isn't that such a beautiful picture of that, right? Now, is God humble? Yes, he is humble. Look at the person of Christ. Christ humbled himself and became a man. And so, yes, definitely God is humble. Okay, next verse. 1 Peter 5:5-7. Likewise, ye younger, stronger, right? Their memories are a little better. Think about that. Likewise, ye younger, submit yourselves to the elder. Yea, all of you be subject to one another, and be clothed with humility. For God resists the proud, and giveth grace to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your cares upon him, for he careth for you. Did you notice that? Humble yourselves, and he will exalt you. There it is, right there. And so again, definitely one of the 12 virtues. Had to make the list, right? All right, courtesy. Titus 3. Now, I use the English Standard Version in this particular case, and the reason is because it used the word courage. The other versions don't use courage. So, yeah. Anyway, I mean not courage, courtesy. Sorry, I got mixed up. So it's the second verse in Titus 3. To speak evil of no one, to avoid quarreling, to be gentle, and to show perfect courtesy towards all people. You know, you can be in the face of someone who is your enemy and still be courteous. You know? And so, to me, I look at some of the stories where David fought people, or some of the stories where other people were in war and they were still courteous. There's a famous story where everybody stopped fighting. It seems like there was a horse tangled up. This is like World War I. There was a horse tangled up in a barbed wire or something, and they went out to save him, and it's like everybody kind of stopped shooting and let him get the horse. You know, I mean, that's the kind of thing you're like, wow, that was really courteous. Kind of going out of your way even though maybe you don't like the person. All right, Colossians 4:6. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that ye may know how ye ought to answer. How many men? Every man, even your enemy, right? And so, again, giving due courtesy. When I didn't play very many sports, not a sports guy, you guys know that. But I did, my dad said, play Little League football 1 year and then I'll leave you alone. So I was like, okay. And I played and I kind of enjoyed it. But one of the things we did after the game, no matter whether we lost or we won, after the game, we had to march out on the field and shake the other team's hand. And we had to do it without being grumpy. We'd get in trouble. Now, I don't know about nowadays, but when we were there, you get in trouble if you weren't courteous, even though you lost, right? This team just stomped a mud hole in me, but I'm going to shake their hands, you know. All right, next verse. Hebrews 13:2. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware. You know, you might be courteous to someone that you don't know, and it'd be an angel. You know? And by the way, for me, courtesy includes hospitality. They kind of go hand in hand. And I picked a fox. I don't know why, but okay, so first of all, a friend of mine told me that foxes are one of, in the animal world, they're one of the male fox is one of the most like caring fathers in the animal world. They will actually bring food to the female, the vixen. She stays with the pups. I think they're called her cubs. I don't remember what they're called. But anyway, he will bring food to her. She, like a bird, you know, will do, but fox will do that. Also, I guess this is from my cartoon, you know, as a kid. But, you know, the fox was always well-spoken and well-mannered, even though he was in the hen house trying to steal chickens. He was like, oh, pardon me, you know, and he's taking chickens. So I have a cartoon brain sometimes. And so to me, the fox is kind of, he's courteous even if he's stealing, right? Okay, yeah. By the way, stealing is wrong, yeah. Okay, contentment. We got two more. Philippians 4:11 through 13. Not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am, wherewith to be content. Verse 12. I know both how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere, and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry. Both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. All things. Have the 12 virtues. And then Psalms 34:10. The young lion do lack and suffer hunger, but they that seek the Lord shall not want any good thing. Now I want you to notice, he didn't say you won't lack anything. He said you won't lack any good thing. There's some things we want that we don't need. They're bad for us, right? But anyway, so contentment. Being content. Now, I think I told Sabbath school, whenever it was, I picked the bear. And there's a reason I picked a bear. A bear will eat anything. He will eat anything, right? And plus, there's this old cartoon I used to watch when I was a kid, Jungle Book. And Baloo the bear had a song he sang, the bare necessities, right? The bare necessities of life. And so, you know, again, a bear is content to eat whatever comes along, whatever he finds. And so I thought it was a good example of contentment. All right, last one. I know, last one. Temperance. 1 Corinthians 9:25 through 27. And every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible. I therefore so run, not as uncertainly, So fight I, not as one that beats the air, but I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means when I have preached to others, I myself should be cast away. That's scary. And it's all about being temperate, right? Having self-control. Resting when you should rest. Working when you should work. Eating when you should eat. By the way, yeah, I blow that all the time. But eating what you should eat. Eating when you should eat. They've found that it's healthy to fast. My doctor told me that. Jason, it's okay if you fast a little bit. I'm like, well, my stomach doesn't think so. But anyway, again, we have room to grow into these virtues, right? But anyway, so I picked the eagle because an eagle, when it flies, it has to have perfect control of its body. And they actually, the male and female will fly, and they have like a mating ritual, I guess is the right word, where they kind of tangle up in the air and fly. Also, they will take care of their kids, their babies and their hatchlings, and at some point they'll push them to go out and fly. How do you think an eagle has perfect control over his body? Do you think it happens right away? No, they learn it. It takes time. Wasn't it in the Pathfinders when we were at Oshkosh? He had a sermon about how long it took an eagle to actually get where it could fly. It's a lot longer than, what was it, a crow he was talking about? You don't remember this?
Blackbirds.
Was it a blackbird? Thank you, sir. Look, he remembers. Yeah, so the blackbird, they're out of the nest like that. But they don't fly all that great, right? But an eagle, he has mastery of flight. And it takes time to develop that. So, so back to let's look at this. All right, so we went through the list of virtues. Some have told me, well, what about compassion? Well, to me, that's in charity. What about forgiveness? Well, that's in charity, that's in patience. So I think it's a pretty comprehensive list. But, I could be missing something. But I had to have 12. Okay, 2 Peter 1. We're going to read this text. It's really good. It's going to be about 3 slides. 2 Peter 1, 3 through 5. According as his divine power hath given unto us all things that pertaineth unto life and godliness. So how are we going to gain these 12 virtues? Through his divine power. Now, I just told you about these virtues, but I'm not saying that you will have them on your own. Because remember, one of them we read is, I can do all things through who? Through Christ. So I'm not telling you to go out and get these virtues on your own. I'm telling you to pray to God, and he will teach you to have these virtues. Okay. Through the knowledge of him that hath called us to glory and to what? Virtue. Whereby are given unto us exceedingly great promises, which I think we read this already, precious promises, that by these ye might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. And besides this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to your virtue knowledge, and to your knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness. You see how the list goes in a cycle here, right? And to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. For if these things be in you and abound, they make you that ye shall neither be barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. But he that lacketh these things is blind, and cannot see afar off, and hath forgotten that he was purged from his old sins. These are the opposite of sins. You see? The virtues are the opposite of sin. Okay. A few more verses here. Wherefore, the rather, brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure. So you're already called. Now let's make it sure by learning his virtues. All right? The calling and election sure. For if you do these things, you shall, when? Fall? Never fall. Verse 11. And so an entrance shall be ministered unto you abundantly into the everlasting kingdom of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. What's the entrance? Christ is the entrance, right? Verse 12. Wherefore I will not be negligent, thank you, to put you away always in remembrance of these things, though ye know them, and be established in the present truth. This is present truth. Okay, so the reason I said all that, or I wanted to go over that text, is it gives you that progression of these virtues. And again, we don't put them on ourselves. That's why I love this picture, right? Remember the last message that I gave on this? I talked about that white was actually all the colors combined. Some of you were here. All the colors are contained in white. And so when we think of Christ's spotless white robe, it's actually all those virtues mixed together into one fabric. That's really cool. Now look, Romans 13:14. But put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provision for the flesh to fulfill the lust thereof. So we put on Christ, we put on his righteousness, we put on his virtues, and we won't fulfill the lust of the flesh. Another verse, Galatians 3:27. For as many as you as have been baptized into Christ have what? Put on Christ. So when you're baptized into Christ, you're putting Christ on. And again, that's his virtues, right? All right. So, when is Christ coming back? Very, very soon. I was talking to some guys at the picnic table during break, and I said, well, if Jesus doesn't come back, and they all kind of, people have been saying that for years. And I said, yeah, that's true. But you know what that means? And he goes, no, what's it mean? He said, that means we're years closer. Right? Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray that you will give us your virtues, that we can be conformed to your image, that we can treat others with kindness and to be patient, and all these things, Lord. I just pray that you'll help us to do these things. You know that we each struggle with one of them. There's this one or that one that we struggle with, and we're not perfect in any of them, but you can make us perfect, and so we trust you for that. And we pray all this in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Let's turn to 185. Jesus is all the world to me. Let's stand.
Oh, I forgot something again. I did the same thing I did last time, didn't I? So, the whole reason that I gave these two messages was because I had some requests. And I forgot again. So, Matthew, if you would come up here for a second. Matthew asked if I ever had an old hat when I got me a new one, if he could have it. And I said, yeah, sure. And then he was like, are you going to forget? I'm going to write you a note. And he wrote me a note to remind me. Now, it's old and faded, and you guys pulled at it. So, it's a little tore, but there you go. Floppy. Hey, it fits your head. But you're welcome. But I want you to remember that when you look at those colors, don't think of the rainbow or, what the world says. Think about the 12 virtues. Okay? All right. Sorry about that. I know.